Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the School Transportation Nation podcast. This episode is brought to you by Trance Finder, the leader in school bus routing software. And our tech tip is brought to you today by Zonar. I'm Tony Corbin, publisher of School Transportation News.
And I'm Ryan Gray, editor-in-chief of School Transportation News. Our guest a little bit later today is Katrina Falk. She's the director of transportation for Shelby Eastern Schools in Indiana. She'll be discussing with us her district's plans for school startup in just 2 weeks' time. So stay tuned. Meanwhile, Tony, I want to wish you a sweet 16.
Thanks, Ryan. It's really special of you. It's bringing me back to my school days. Podcast, 16th episode. I can't believe it. We've been at it for 4 months. Who would have thunk it? That means we've been in COVID for 4 months, too. Maybe even longer for some people. It boggles the mind that it's just literally festered this long. But you know what? With these things come innovation, and that is why you have this beautiful podcast.
That's right. And thank you, all of you, School Transportation Nation out there that is making this possible. Every week, we are getting a lot of great feedback from listeners and readers of the magazine and our website, of course, on the invaluable tools that they're getting from these conversations, hearing what transportation directors are doing, the challenges that they're having, because these challenges are shared across the industry. People like Sherry Sandquist, she's a transportation supervisor at Lakewood School District 306 in Arlington, Washington. That's Snohomish County area, northeast of Seattle. She writes, "Thank you for the availability of the podcasts. This was very helpful to listen to what other school districts are doing around the country while we are trying to create plans ourselves. It is good to hear the diversity of options, that not everyone is doing the same thing. This will help when we all put the options out there to choose and know what others are doing. It gives her some of the things to think about sooner rather than later." She says, "Small details that will come up once drivers are out on the routes. I can address them now and have a written guidelines and tools for the drivers so they will be successful." Thank you, Sherry. That's great feedback. Keep it going. Again, you can find the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. Sign up, tell a friend, and become a part of the conversation. Reach out to us. Let us know what you guys are doing in your district or your bus company. We'd love to have you on.
Ryan, if they want to drop us some questions so we can maybe address those on the podcast, emailing you, me, what's going on?
They can email me, Ryan at stnonline.com. They can head over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/stnmag. They can go on our Twitter page, twitter.com/stnmagazine. They can go on our Instagram page. You can find all these links on our main website, stnonline.com. Head over there. One way or another, we'll hear from you, and we'll try to address your challenges.
Well, Ryan, let's give them more of that good stuff with your weekly update. I know there's a lot going on out there. Hit us with what you got.
Well, a lot of what dominated headlines last week was a national dialogue on safely reopening America's schools that was hosted by President Trump at the White House on July 7th. Basically, the Trump administration is calling for the return of all students to in-person education. He noted that young people do, quote, extraordinarily well, unquote, in terms of how they react to COVID-19. We've been discussing for several weeks now some similar initial findings coming out of Europe. Countries like Sweden are saying that they're having few, if any, cases of COVID-19 as they've been reopening schools. Now, granted, those are countries that are a lot smaller than the U.S., and the U.S. has over a quarter of all COVID-19 cases worldwide. So it's comparing apples to oranges just a bit, but definitely with where the economy has been, and we do see the economy rebounding. Really, we see heading into the elections as well this fall, a real concerted effort to get America going again, and certainly schools are a very big part of that. Granted, as our readers know, there are millions of students transported on school buses every day, and especially those with disabilities that are compromised medically, and they are at greater risk for getting COVID-19, regardless of what a lot of the studies now are coming out and saying, with children being able to be more resilient to COVID-19. Still, we know that one of the big markers of infection rates seems to be underlying medical conditions. So that, obviously, we've been talking about, has created a lot of anxiety and concern for school bus drivers who tend to be older and have compromised medical histories. The big takeaway from this national dialogue was creating a plan for these folks, and how can we move forward aggressively but safely. As Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar talked about, he said that children who aren't attending school are missing out on healthcare and mental health services, as well as social and nutritional supports. Really, again, one of the reasons why kids need to get back into school, as well as there's a lot of mandatory reporting of on-child crime that can only occur in physical school settings. And we've seen some headlines recently that a lot of the kids that have been kept home at school, there's been rising rates of child abuse and things like that. So what do we do, right? And this whole recommendation coming from Trump really comes on the heels of what the American Academy of Pediatrics released a couple weeks ago in saying that children are best served, if at all possible, going back to school. So a part of this national dialogue was Dr. Sally Goza, and she was there to expand a little bit more on the American Academy of Pediatrics stance. Listen to her comments right here.
Of course, returning to school must be done safely. It is important to make the school environment safe for all those in the building. School leaders and state and local public health officials will need to work together to ensure safety for children, teachers, and staff. We all will need to be nimble and flexible and ready to switch gears based on factors including each community's prevalence of COVID-19 cases.
So as we know, school buses must be considered an extension of the classroom and the school building as well. So a lot that is still going on. This gives food for thought to a lot of our readers. Meanwhile, some controversy coming out of Florida and directly related to really the Trump administration's plan here to push all kids going back to school. Last week, a day before actually the White House summit, Florida Education Commissioner Richard Corcoran issued an executive order that essentially calls for all students to return to physical classrooms 5 days a week and receive the same array of services as they did before COVID-19 closures. But local counties and health departments can still veto that order and provide remote and hybrid learning. We have an article up on our STN website. Check it out for more.
Thanks, Ryan, for that. You know, I was reading an article today. It was on NBC News, and it was talking about schools face a funding crunch amid rising technology costs. The article goes on to talk about how public schools are investing heavily in tech. It's a must-have. And a lot of these districts are getting this tech maybe at a discount, but, you know, that's only going to last for so long. We're going to definitely see those sorts of things during these times. Prices will go up. Definitely, tech is essential to operating a system amid all these challenges. As districts consider what their new schedules will look like, here's a helpful tech tip from our friends at Zonar, a leader in smart fleet management. Student schedules are about to change, so are their bus schedules, but safety remains top priority. Make sure student riders get on and off the right bus at the right stop using Zonar Verify. Based on daily routing info, Verify alerts the drivers of any exception so the driver can prevent a dangerous mistake. Right student, right bus, right stop. Every time. Learn more at zonarsystems.com/verify. That's zonarsystems.com/verify. All right. On a positive note, our June numbers for jobs have come in. Ryan, you want to give us a little info on that update?
Yeah, we had 4.8 million jobs were added in June, and that takes the 2-month tally to over 7.5 million new jobs added as states have been reopening. That is welcome news in terms of school funding, which is so dependent on local taxpayers and tax dollars. So getting people back to work and spending money at restaurants and whatnot, even though, again, like I mentioned earlier, we've seen some states closing down a little bit, like here in California, our restaurants have closed back down, except for if they have outside seating. We'll see as we see these numbers spike, what's the next step and how July numbers will look. But the more people working, of course, the better it is for schools and student transportation. Meanwhile, the NASDAQ is seeing record numbers as well. And it comes back to what I was talking before, where the Trump administration certainly is really pushing the economy. They're really pushing getting back to normal. But there's a flip side on this whole jobs gains, right? Is that good news in terms of the school bus driver shortage? Early on in this COVID-19 pandemic, we voiced the concern about common conversations that we heard in the industry that high unemployment from all these school and state closures might help alleviate the driver and mechanic shortage like it did following the 2008 recession. But we pointed out that COVID-19 appeared to be far different than any previous recession the world has endured. And lo and behold, that was right. We started hearing from a lot of school bus drivers who shared anxiety about returning to school because of their age and their underlying medical conditions, because it makes them especially susceptible to contracting the coronavirus. But now with over 2 million leisure and hospitality jobs back, nearly 750,000 retail jobs added, that means also there's fewer potential school bus driver applicants to address some of these challenges. Again, some school districts are doing better than others. We'll hear in a little bit from Katrina Falk in Indiana, where she is a more rural district, but not seeing some of the challenges of some of her neighbors. Again, we'll have to see how that all plays out. Meanwhile, there was definitely good news coming out of Alabama, where Governor Kay Ivey awarded $10 million of the state's cut from the Federal CARES Act Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund to install Wi-Fi routers in all school buses. Alabama has about 7,700 route buses operated by 138 school districts, so that would be quite an install. The goal is to increase internet connectivity for students. Read more on our website.
Speaking of technology, here's an update on what the folks at Trance Finder are up to these days with their new web-based routing solution, Route Finder Plus. Trance Finder is making the magic happen for their clients. Plus is critical for today's COVID-19 climate because it allows routers to work remotely with lightning speed. And it allows districts to create as many what-if scenarios as they want. For example, a district deal with how many students they can have on a bus to meet government guidelines. Then they can flip a switch and activate any of the scenarios they've already created. With the report writer, you can even run cost analysis. Because it's web-based, you can do all this from your home or office, basically any place you have an internet connection. Sounds way better than just pulling a rabbit out of the hat. Contact Trance Finder to see how they can help you reopen school. Get plus at trancefinder.com and put STN podcast in the subject line. And if you're one of the first from your state, email Trance Finder. You're going to be eligible for an Amazon gift card. That's getplus at trancefinder.com. Yeah, Ryan, as I mentioned, tech is definitely a big topic of conversation. Do you think we should let the STN podcast nation know about what we're cooking on? What do you think? Should we break the news here?
Yeah, let's lift the lid and let them take a gaze at what's boiling.
All right. Well, our team has been busy bees. We are coming to you guys first with this breaking news tidbit. We are coming to market with first of its kind Bus Technology Summit virtual, right? Because obviously in-person events are challenging at the moment. So we're bringing it to you virtual. It's going to be September 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. There's going to be lots coming up on that. And as we know more in the coming months, we do have STN Expo Indianapolis still on the docket for October 8th through the 13th, and STN Expo Reno November 1st through the 5th. We are getting signups from attendees from all over the country. There is actively people signing up. Even amid all the stuff going on out there, people are feeling, hey, should we go? What's the risk? And I guess we'll take a look 4 or 5 months from now and we'll see, hey, are we going to be able to do these live events? We sure hope so. But if we can't, we'll have virtual events as a secondary backup. But we're excited to offer this new Bus Technology Summit to you guys. And it's free as well. Coming up soon, we'll have more information for you. But just wanted to share a little insight into what we've been up to over here at STN. Next, we're going to hear from Katrina Falk about Shelby Eastern Schools' back-to-school plans.
Welcome back, everyone. Pleased to be joined by Katrina Falk, the Director of Transportation for Shelby Eastern Schools in Indiana. Katrina, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
I want to jump right into it. One of the things top of mind of our listeners is what are reopening plans? And you guys just finalized yours recently, didn't you?
Yes, we did. Our school board approved ours on July 1st.
And what are you guys doing?
Well, we've been fortunate because our reopening committee was actually formed in May. So we've been working on this plan for a couple months now. And it basically outlines our health protocols for individual schools, what our county health department, what kind of guidance they've given us, general precautions, a home screener, what our instructional learning is going to look like as far as in-classroom learning versus the online learning option that we're offering. It hits on transportation, food services, school safety, common areas such as our recess areas, gymnasium, so on and so forth, what our nurses' stations are going to look on. So it's pretty comprehensive, A to Z. Everything you can think of within a school district, it hits on it.
Okay. For the school bus routes and your runs, what is that going to look like? I mean, we've had a lot of people talking about reducing capacity on school buses. Have you guys run any of those kind of calculations? What do you have to adhere to?
Right. We have been bombarded by every scenario that you could possibly imagine over the last couple months. Luckily, right now in Indiana, we do not have any restrictions as far as capacity, but our transportation department is concentrating on 5 core areas to make sure we're keeping our students and our staff safe. The first area is, of course, best practices prior to reporting for work. That goes through that home screener and what drivers and aides need to do before they even report to work. We're going to concentrate on best practices on the school bus in terms of assigned seating, the order in which students are boarding and unloading, trying to keep students from the same household together, and trying to keep the immediate area around the driver empty. We're also attempting to limit our alternate transportation. And what that basically is students who are going to babysitters, stepmom, stepdad, grandma, grandpa, whatever the case might be. It's really important to us this school year to make sure the majority of our students are riding the same route in the same assigned seat because of the contract tracing that we have to deal with this year. We're also talking about best practices at the bus stop, in loading zones. We're trying to revise our unloading processes at the schools so that we don't have a big congregation of students offloading. The same holds true for afternoon when they're loading. We have a whole section that covers sanitizing school buses. Of course, we're following the guidance that's been given by the CDC as far as what type of disinfectants we need to be using. We're considering all of the equipment manufacturer recommendations for those sanitizing products. And then also, we're hitting the driver and aide education pretty hard because obviously there's so much more information that our drivers and aides need to be aware of as we roll into the school year. So that's kind of an outline of the 5 main points that we're hitting on within our department.
Okay. And understand that you've been doing a lot of work remotely and some of your staff has. So your superintendent has really been trying to limit the number of employees for obvious reasons who are actually physically at the transportation department. Does that mean you've had a lot of your school bus drivers out and kind of staying at home throughout this whole time?
Absolutely. Our schools closed on Friday, March 13th. And we were just anticipating, like everybody else, we'd be closed for maybe a week or two, just trying to figure out what the situation was. Well, word came quickly that all of our schools in Indiana were going to be shut down for the rest of the school year per a governor's orders. So all of our drivers, all of our bus aides, they've been at home this entire time. Fortunately, our school board was very proactive with this, so they were paid their normal hourly pay, and also our contracted drivers were getting their contracted amount. So it's been kind of a strange situation having everybody at home, but we're very fortunate how it has worked out so that we've been able to retain our drivers and bus aides.
An article actually that I have coming out in our August magazine issue, I'm looking at remote learning. So obviously a lot of the conversation nationwide has been about, of course, the kids that have been at home doing remote learning, and a lot of states and school districts are continuing some kind of hybrid model going into the new school year. It doesn't sound like you guys are, but in terms of keeping all these school bus drivers and monitors, aides, other transportation staff trained, and you guys in contact with them as the supervisors and managers, what have you been doing for remote learning for them?
Well, in our situation, I've been very blessed because we have a small staff in comparison to some other school districts. We have 18 bus routes, so 18 regular drivers, 2 special education bus aides, and then a couple of our sub drivers that we have out there. When we first shut down, I've tried to remain in contact with everybody, usually through a group text, just so we're all on the same page. We know what's going on. I know a lot of them had concerns early on into this as far as what was going to happen, if school was ever going to reopen again, if it didn't open in the fall, what it was going to look like for them. So, obviously it's difficult for us to do our back to school driver training the way that we normally would, because normally we would bring everybody back a couple weeks before school started. We would do their yellow card renewal. We would go through any new legislation that they might need to be aware of. And coming into this school year, we're concerned about having everybody together in a confined space. Unfortunately, being a smaller district, we don't necessarily have some of the online opportunities that some of our larger neighbors have, but we are breaking down the number of drivers that we do have coming in to renew their yellow cards and to get that back to school information. So it's really fragmented this year compared to previous years where we'd have a big welcome back and a breakfast and have everybody together. So I've really tried to make this look as normal as we can, because of course it's just been a very difficult time for everybody to digest what's going on. But I think, my role through all of this has been to make sure that all of our drivers and aides are okay and that they get that consistency from us and that stability from us, and we try to make it as normal as possible. We are utilizing some online trainings from one of our partners. Our superintendent actually just approved some COVID-19 related training for our drivers and the rest of our school staff. And this will actually be the first time that we've tried some of this online training with everybody. So it will be interesting to see how that works out with our drivers and our bus aides.
Well, we'll definitely have to circle back and find out how that all goes.
Right.
And now you're saying you have 18 drivers. So now do you anticipate, are all those 18 the same ones you had in the spring? Are you seeing any attrition? How's that looking? A lot of school bus drivers we've heard from are very anxious, obviously, because of their age or underlying medical conditions about coming back to work.
There's actually been a surprising amount of positivity from our drivers, which is very encouraging for me. The one instance that we have with the route coming open, that was not even related to anything going on. It's just normal turnover with someone having a better opportunity outside of the school district. So luckily, the way we're set up, we have 12 individual contract drivers who own their own equipment, and they contract with the district to provide transportation. They are going into, the second year of their 4-year contract. So we would have some issues with contractual agreements, so on and so forth, if they decide to retire or move on. And then all of our corporation drivers are returning. Our bus aides are returning. And, being in a smaller, more rural area, I think everybody is just ready to get back into some type of routine and some type of normalcy. Unfortunately, some districts surrounding us haven't had the same reaction from their staff, but I'm very encouraged coming into the school year. It hasn't slowed them down. Obviously, we have a lot of drivers who fall into that at-risk category. I've spoke with a couple of them today, and they're just ready to see their kids again. So that's wonderful.
Great. That's good to hear. Definitely encouraging stuff. A lot of our listeners will remember your name from a recent online article profile that Taylor Hannon wrote. And in that article, we know that number one, you've had school bus in your veins, the yellows running through your veins for a long time. You've been a driver since you were before 18, I think. One of the things that popped out to me is I know you, and I know that you're a big consumer. That's what I said earlier. I was kidding you, of technology. You're really big on technology, but you weren't always that way. But you've really come to embrace technology. So can you run through a little bit of what you guys have been using and how that is shaping up to help you guys and maybe evolving the use of that technology to deal with all this COVID-19 craziness?
I don't know where I would be right now if it wasn't for some of the technology that we have available to us. Like you said early on, when I started my career almost 20 years ago, I was reluctant to technology, but having been in the director's role, I really have come to understand and appreciate it. We have been a faithful Trance Finder customer since I came back to Shelby Eastern Schools with Route Finder Pro. We were using a different parent app, but right before all of this happened, we actually signed on for Trance Finder's Stop Finder parent app so that we could have all of our providers under the same umbrella. And as schools started to close, we looked to Stop Finder to communicate information with our parents because originally we thought we were going to be running food delivery routes and homework packet delivery routes. So we were able to create a new data source in Trance Finder and then link that to Stop Finder, and parents were going to be able to download the app and see the schedule for when they might expect that food delivery or homework delivery. The gears shifted a little as Indiana went into a shelter-in-place situation, and we actually tabled the idea of doing food delivery and homework packet delivery because we didn't want to expose anybody any more than we had to. But in the process of school being closed, we took advantage of some of the downtime without students in the buildings, and I've actually upgraded from Trance Finder Route Finder Pro to Trance Finder Route Finder Plus, which is their newest software that they have available. And that has been an incredible experience in terms of the capabilities that it offers and what it can do compared to Route Finder Pro. I can set the district policies. Let's say we're only allowed to have 15 students on a bus. I can reset the district policy to 15 students per bus. I can open up my existing routes. I can optimize the routes off of those district policies. Once it sees that I have more than 15 students on a bus, it will break that route into as many trips as it has to in order to accommodate that capacity. And even though those routes may not be perfect, it's a very good starting point to begin tweaking them. So instead of having to reinvent the wheel entirely, this platform has allowed me to work out a lot of those what if scenarios and to have those capacity restrictions in place, or to filter routes by students if we want to do last names A through M on one day and then last names N through Z on another day. So, it's been kind of a weird time as far as being out of school, but I've really maximized the time that I've had in order to beef up our technology. And that in turn has helped us plan for a lot of these scenarios just in case the state of Indiana comes out with new guidelines before August.
That's great stuff that you guys are doing there. Now, earlier you mentioned contact tracing as well. That's something that a lot of folks in student transportation never really had to do before, didn't even know what that was before COVID-19. What are you guys doing in that realm?
Well, as I hit on earlier, we always encourage seating charts on our buses just for accountability purposes. But this year, all of our buses are going to have assigned seating. Like I said before, our drivers are just going to be encouraged to carefully consider who's getting on at what stop. I've seen a couple different models where they've suggested filling the bus from the back to the front. Couple other suggestions there. It's a little difficult in our case to do that because we transport K through 12. So, of course, we don't want kindergartners in the very back of the bus by themselves. But, we're going to try to take a look at the routes and see how we might assign those seats based off of the order in which the students get on. Obviously, we're going to sit siblings together where it makes sense, younger students together. And then also try to keep the front of the bus open if we can so that we don't have students right up against the driver. but having the accountability from the routing software, if there's ever something that comes up and we need to know who was on that bus at this moment in time, that's at our fingertips now. And it's almost scary to think about. Just a couple of years ago, we didn't even have route sheets. We didn't have rosters. It was just the same route that it had been for the last 30 years. And if there was a new student, the driver picked them up. There wasn't a process for keeping tabs on where these students were coming from and where they were going. We keep track of all of our alternate transportation students now, which, like I said, we're trying to limit that because we want to keep all of our students on the same route if possible. But, accountability was always the first factor, but now we've got this contact tracing in the mix. So having all of this information available through the technology, it really helps us just in case we need to produce that data immediately.
Well, it sounds like you guys are definitely relatively good shape heading into start of school, which is just in a couple weeks, August 5th. So good luck as the school year comes. And thank you so much for sharing your insights and what's going on there.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's very difficult to make plans based off of uncertainty, but we're doing the best that we can to keep our students, their families, and our staff as safe as we can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katrina, for coming on the podcast to share. We hope you had a great time with us today. School Transportation Nation, we're here for you. You can access all this great content and previous episodes anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, share it with your friends. Don't forget to leave those 5-star reviews. We love those. Keep up on our website, stnonline.com, to keep up to date on the latest news, school startup, and coronavirus perspectives and trends. I want to also specially thank our sponsors, Trance Finder and Zonar. Stay safe and well. We'll see you next week.